think to tonight's class? Okay, this is crooked, isn't it? Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't see anyone online just yet. Kim's not here to tell me if she's texting. If you're online watching us, please say hi, so I know you're here. Thank you to everyone that helped with today's tea. Thank you to everyone that helped with today's tea. It was a tea and a half for you. Just okay. Kim is watching. Hello, Kim. Hello, Andrea. Hello, Gail. I can now see people are watching. Baruch Hashem. If you're watching us, Chabad.org, let me know. We have all the regulars here, and welcome to Stuart for joining us. Hopefully, the first time in many. Tonight's class, we're ready to start. Okay, I'm going to start with a joke. First of all, a good one. Before that, tonight's class is in memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef, is the Shamash elevation in Gan Eden, and the son should have a full shlema, be healthy and good with time. So, good evening, how are you? I promise you the joke I'm going to say does have a message. I still don't see any viewers. I don't know who's watching. Okay, no. Hopefully somebody's watching. Okay, so I promise you I'm going to say this joke is a little borderline, but it's a good joke. And it fits like perfectly to what we're going to talk about tonight. There was a couple, and the husband had this very bad habit of releasing gas all the time. And he was like good at it, you know. He was a professional gas releaser who was loud, and the whole room knew when he released gas, and his wife couldn't stand it. And she would tell him, "I'm warning you that one day you're going to release gas so loudly, so intensely, all of your guts are going to come spilling out." And she would warn them all the time. I'm telling you, one day your kishkin are going to come out, and you're going to lose everything. You're going to get one loud explosion. You'll literally explode. All of your intestines will just come out of your rear end. And he would laugh at her and say, "Yeah, no." One morning, it's Thanksgiving morning, and the husband's fast asleep in bed. It's early in the morning, and she gets up early to go and prepare the turkey for that night. And she's in the kitchen all by herself, and she's cleaning the insides of the turkey. And all of a sudden, this wicked idea gets into her head. You getting the idea, huh? There's a wicked idea. She's cleaning out all the intestines of the turkey, and all that stuff that goes inside there, all the kishkas of the turkey. She scoops it all up, everything, the guts, the intestines, the whole pile of stuff of intestines of that turkey. She quietly sneaks it back into the bedroom. Her husband is fast asleep. And she very gently opens his pajamas, pulls back the back of his pajamas, and puts the entire bowl of turkey intestines into his pajamas as he sleeps. She goes back downstairs. Half hour later, all of a sudden, she hears in the bedroom a shriek. At the top of his lungs, she can hear her husband screaming, shock and horror. She hears him running to the bathroom, and she's rolling downstairs. She can barely stop from laughing so hard. And she's waiting and waiting for her husband to come out of the bathroom. 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes goes by. She's almost getting nervous, like she should go check on him. And finally come downstairs with a look of horror on his face. He looks like he's pale, he's white, he looks terrible. She says, "What happened?" He's trying as hard as she can to keep a straight face. She says, "You'll never believe it. When you always said what happened, it happened. I never believed it, but it happened." So what happened? She said, "This morning, all my intestines came. But the good news is, after 20 minutes in the bathroom with a full jar of Vaseline and all 5 fingers, I think I was able to get it all back inside.
This is it.
No secret. Good evening, everyone. So why don't I share this joke? Because what I'm going to talk about today is exactly this. Tonight's conversation is going to be about anger. You know what anger really is? We take other people's crap, with all due respect, and their garbage, their issues, and instead of ignoring it, we internalize it. We don't just internalize it, we like work hard to internalize it. We use all 5 fingers, like stick it back inside us. It doesn't belong in us. It's not ours. It's someone else's comment. Someone else made a stupid comment. Someone else behaved rudely. Someone else made a mistake. And instead of saying, okay, they made a mistake, we internalize their comment or their forgetfulness or their error or their moment of, stupidity, and we take their mess up, their spilled intestines, their leftovers, that's not edible, and instead of saying, oh, this is garbage, let's throw it out, you know what we do? We stick it deep inside ourselves, and we're proud of ourselves. Oh, it took me 20 minutes and a whole jar of Vaseline, but I got their dirty comment, it's like, now I can fertilize it well. Is that a good analogy for anger? That's when I heard the joke, that's what my rabbi brain thought of. You guys thinking of my rabbi brain said, wow, this is exactly what we teach about. This is a perfect analogy for people getting angry. We take other people's crap and deeply internalize it so that their lives would be miserable because that person was rude. That person forgot to invite me to their party. That person, said something inappropriate to told my dress looks whatever, etc., etc. I shouldn't minimize the hurtful things that people do to make some people angry. To be fair, sometimes people are truly mean, truly obnoxious, and their forgetfulness may have been a mistake, but it's deeply hurtful. So I'm not minimizing. But at the end of the day, we work hard to internalize that mistake. It becomes now our problem that we're carrying around inside us. Some turkey's intestines because we decided to internalize what we should just like. So I believe that was really good for the introduction, in my very humble opinion. I'm very proud of it, but I thought about it myself, and I think it's a great analogy. Maybe you'll remember it. We're going to talk about anger. We're going to read a powerful Mishnah in this week's chapter of Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 5, Mishnah 11. It talks about 4 different kinds of people who get angry. 4 different kinds of people get angry. I hope you all forgive me for the humor that I started with. I know it was a little borderline, but it's okay. Sometimes we get yeah. So before we read the Mishnah, I'll read the first 3 words. The Mishnah is going to start off by telling us that there's arba midos ba'adam. There are 4 in people. 4. Sorry, not midos. Sorry, arba deya. 4 kinds of knowledge. By the way, the translation they use here is temperament, but really it doesn't say a midah. A midah would mean the proper Hebrew word for a temperament would be a midah. You know Hebrew, right? The midah means a character. A deya means a thought process, a mindset, a paradigm. Deya comes from the word das, to know. So when the Mishnah starts out by saying that there's 4 deos ba'adam, 4 minds in a person, the Mishnah is already hinting to us something very, very important and very powerful, which is that the different ways that people respond to these hurtful comments, painful moments, being forgotten from a party, being, made fun of, whatever it is. These reactions of anger that we sometimes feel, you know why we sometimes feel them? Not because of our character, but because of our thought process. We behave and we react and we respond to certain emotions or to certain comments with the emotional response of anger that we respond to, not because that's who I am, but because that's how I've taught myself to think. And that's also a very important point. Very opening already tells us there's 4 different kinds of deos, of knowledge, of ways that people look and think about life, which causes 4 different ways that they respond. So I'm not going to read this inside. I'm going to ask you a question first. And based on your response, then we'll read the mission, okay? I have to tell you, there's been a lot of time since Saturday thinking about these 2 lines. A lot of time has been in my mind. Maybe will tell you I was driving around. I was just listening to these classes. I was thinking about this. I've been trying to understand and internalize these lines. The mission is going to tell us 4 kinds of people. The first 2 kinds of people, we'll start with. The first person will be the person who gets angry easily, but also lets go of his anger easily. So it's easy to get angered, but easy to get appeased. The second kind of person is a person that doesn't get angry easily. They're a little bit more tough-skinned, and they're able to let certain things go, and they're able to recognize that the fact that this person offended me doesn't mean I need to be angry for the rest of my life, and I can ignore it. But once they do get angry, that's it. They stay angry for a very long time, and it's very, very hard to get them to let go of their anger. So I see that you're looking at this sheet and cheating, but if you're watching me online, you can't cheat. But the sheet may confuse you. But forget the sheet for a second. I'm asking you to think for a second. In your mind, which do you think is worse to be? Or which was better? Let's be positive. Which is better? Is it better to be easily angered, but easily forgivable? Or forgiving, rather, right? Easily forgiving. Or is it better to be much more oblivious to other people's flaws and comments, etc. But you're much more, once you do get offended, you stay offended. Which one do you think is a better character to have? The first one. You say the second. Oh, none of it. That's not an option. We're talking about real people here. This is a class of real people. So ethics of our fathers are telling us about living life in reality. You say the first one, meaning better to be easily angry but easily forgiving. What do you say, ladies? Same. First. Stuart, everyone, you all agree? Bruce, Robert, you all agree? I agree. You agree. Robert's being quiet. He's very smart. Robert's hedging his bets. Robert knows behind there's going to be an action over here. You think you know the answer? Well, guess what? There's no right or wrong answer because of different rabbis that say different things. And I struggle to understand both perspectives, which I believe I've come to understand, and we'll go through it in order. So I'm going to read the Mishnah. Now I have to tell you as follows. Even though the Mishnah is exact to the word, and really all Mishnahs are the same, and there's very few variations, there are times when there's different girsas. The word girsa means I should actually know how to say that in English. Different variations of the text. But somehow over the course of time, even though Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi made one final version, for those who remember our course on how the Mishnah was written, for many hundreds of years afterwards, it was memorized and passed down orally. There were no printing presses when the Mishnah was written, and there were very few actual copies of the Mishnah, and so there was still much of an oral element of teachers, which is why the Mishnah was written the way it was written, to be easily memorized, etc. So today, there are actually 2 different versions of this Mishnah. And the difference of the versions is just the order of 2 words. But the order of those 2 words will have a completely different meaning. Okay? So I'm going to first read the Mishnah the way that the version of Rashi and Rabbeinu Yonah and the Bartanura, and if you go into Sefaria, or I'm going to assume, I didn't look up, I'm going to assume if you open the Art Scroll Mishnayos, this is the some way you'll find in many versions, this version we're going to read first. It says as follows. Let me share my screen. If you're watching on my personal Facebook page or on my YouTube channel, or I can look at the chat. I showed the chat. So on the chat, I'm being told that easily forgiving. Chanukah, so easily forgiving is the better one. So Dvorah, Ravid is with you. She says neither. Don't get angry, not quickly, not slowly. Yeah. No option is a good option. Yeah, I'm sorry to look at the chat. So good evening, everyone that's watching from all over the world. Trump and Joe, And Inez says the first is. So many of you are all saying the first is better. So
four. The third is obviously the best.
Well, we didn't get to the third and fourth. Now you're way ahead. Back to the first two. Okay, so there's four kinds of temperaments. Number one, easy to become angry and easy to be appeased. His gain disappears in his loss. The Hebrew word yatsa hefseder, the hefsed, the law. Yatsa tarei, the hefseder. The reward of being easily appeased is lost in the fact that he's easily angered. The person who's hard to become angry and hard to be appeased, his loss disappears in his gain. Those words are hard words, I know. It's just the two words. But what the first version of the Mishnah is saying, someone who's easily angered, but easily appeased, has a gain. What's his gain? What's his merit? His virtue. His virtue is that he gets over things easily. But even though he gets over things easy, which is a virtue, it's a gain, the fact that he's always easily upset and easily offended, and therefore everyone around him has to walk, or her, has to walk around this person on eggshells, and they're constantly in a state of anger and always angry. I'm not angry. I should be angry. So the fact that they have a virtue that they can easily forgive is lost by the fact that they're constantly getting offended, which is contrary to what most of you said. However, when someone is hard to become, and they also have a hard time being appeased, they have a loss. What's their loss? That they hold a grudge, they hold on to anger, but nevertheless, that is lost in the fact that that he doesn't get offended so easily. So this is the first version of the Mishnah, which basically says that being slow to anger is a bigger reward. You know why? Because in the big picture, you spend less time being angry. Some people, it takes a lot to get them angry. And so therefore, they don't get angry that often. Yes, it's true, once they get angry, it's a problem they hold on to anger. But not everyone makes them angry. Not everything makes them angry. Some people get angry all the time. Stupid things make them angry. And even though maybe it's easy for them to let go of it because it was a stupid thing, but if you spend your whole day getting angry at things, the fact that you can let go is a virtue, but not enough virtue to outweigh the loss of always getting offended. That's the first way, the classic way of reading the Mishnah, of many different opinions of many rabbis, that the reward, the virtue of being able to let go of anger is not enough. It's outweighed by the danger, by the loss of always getting angry. Okay.
Well, wait a minute. On practical life,
and that's the thing that
does not play like that in practical life, because you see people that are often quick to forgive and not hold a grudge. They live healthier lives, and opposed somebody that internalizes, uses that 20 pounds of Vaseline, like you said before, and they keep it all in, they tend to explode and have higher blood pressure,
yes,
depression, whatever.
That's true.
And then they become suicidal or something.
So first of all, here it's partly, so basically what you're saying is that some people hold on to their anger and it weighs them down, and you're going to see a different version in 1 second, which you'll agree with more. But it's also true that it's about how many things are you holding anger for. The people that are slow to anger, even though they hold a grudge, holding on to only a few grudges. Not saying that it's good.
You're being very deep.
Yeah, it's a problem. But there's some people that are angry at a lot of people. There's some people that have a whole list of grievances. And you ask them how, they'll give you a whole list. They'll tell you how many things went wrong that day. They're angry, the traffic was slow, and the person stole their coffee, and they have a whole list. In one day, 5 people pissed them off.
We can't help it.
No, that's not true, by the way. It's not about it. No, this mic is the wrong way. Right, so a person gets upset all the time, is carrying negativity in them, and that's what this version of the Mishnah is saying, that the fact that you're so negative, you get angry all the time, you're carrying all this anger. And you're so easily like you're a tinderbox that you constantly flare up. That negative of being easily angered is worse than the positive of letting go of anger. All the time negative. That's one way of understanding these two character traits. However, many other rabbis have a different version, which is just a switch of two words. And the Alter Rebbe, who is the author of the Siddur that we use, and in the Siddur we have the Alter Rebbe took what he considered the most authentic, authoritative version of Pirkei Avos. The Alter Rebbe does not read this version that I just read a minute ago. In the Siddur, so in the Chabad version, so to say, of Pirkei Avos, we follow the version of the Magin Avos and of the Midrash David and of the Lechem Shemayim and many other rabbis who read it a little differently. So let's read now. I'm putting the same text, but now I'm putting the way it is in the Alter Rebbe's version, which is also the version of the Midrash David and the Magin Avos and others. And here it's a little bit different. Here's the other way of reading the Mishnah. Easy to become angry and easy to be appeased. His loss disappears in his gain. Hard to become angry and hard to be appeased. His gain disappears in his loss. So what does that mean? This version is saying, now someone that's easily angered and easily appeased has a loss. What's his loss? That he gets easily angered. But that fact that he gets easily angered is less bad than the fact that he lets go. He lets go. As opposed to a person who doesn't always get angry. He's not always negative. But when they do get offended, they carry that anger deep inside them. As you're saying, they don't let go and they carry it and carry it. So the fact that they have a gain of not always being a negative and not always getting angry is lost in the loss of not letting go of their anger. So what's the logic here? But think for a second. I have to look in the commentaries. So the rabbis tell us that in Judaism, you look after the completion. You look at the end of a story. How do you judge something? By its ending. By its ending. So someone that gets angry all the time, but then they let go all the time. So after all is said and done, are they happy or are they angry? They're happy. They're happy because they don't take their anger so deep. So they're angry and then they move on to the next thing. But someone that carries anger inside them and can't let go of their anger, a week later, a month later, they're still angry. You just mention that person's name and all of a sudden they feel their blood pressure starting because they haven't forgotten. Yeah. There you go. You and the Alter Rebbe L'chaim. Personally, I first resonated with the first way. After I thought about this for a long time, I now resonate with the Alter Rebbe's way more. And I actually, personally, I understand both ways. I could explain either way to you. But personally, I would personally feel the second way. The way the Alter Rebbe says, the people that can't let go of anger remain angry. And remaining angry is even more dangerous than being easily angered. Now, what's clear from this conversation is that regardless of how you say it, getting angry is not a good thing, right? That's pretty obvious by now that, as Stephanie is saying, that negativity is poison and it's dangerous. But it doesn't. Okay. So negativity is poison, which is going to be the next part of our Mishnah. The tzaddik and the rashas. Now we're going to get to person 3 and person 4. Who's going to be person number 3? What do you guys think? You vote for 3. Person number 3 says the Mishnah is a person who is hard to become angry and easy to let go, easy to be appeased. So such a person is a chassid, a pious person, a righteous person, because he has both advantages. He doesn't get offended and doesn't get angry easily. And even when he does get offended, he works on letting go right away. On the flip side of the coin, person number 4 is the person who is easy to become angry and hard to be appeased. That's the Rasha. That's the Rasha. That's a wicked person who has a very, very dangerous negativity inside them. That's very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. Okay. Now, I have to explain. What? So I have to explain to you something about these person number 3 and number 4. 2 things I have to explain to you. First of all, why is one a tzaddik and one no rasha? Maybe to say one's more angry, less angry. Why does being hard to get angry and easy to let go make you a righteous person? So you have to understand that in nature, in human nature, some people are naturally impulsive. They naturally get angered easily. They're impulsive. They get emotions quickly. But the same way they can switch emotions easily, so they can get angry easily, they can let go easily. That's just their personality. So the first 2 people are not people that have worked on changing their identity. They're just 2 natural states of being. Some people impulsively get angry and they are able to then move on to the next thing easier. And some people, by their natural personality, are more thick-skinned, if you will, and they're more difficult to get angry. They're more deliberate. They're more, they think more. They're more controlled. But once you get into them and once you do offend them, it's their nature to be more deliberate before they let go of what they're holding on to. However, when you have someone who's slow to anger, person number 3 who's slow to anger, which means that what kind of natural personality is he? He's deliberate, or he's a deliberate person. He's a person not impulsive. Doesn't just change moods on the spin of a wheel, or the spin of a coin, I mean. Just because you said something, I don't get bent out of shape because you said something. I think, I analyze. It's my personality. I'm slow to anger because my nature, I'm more reserved, I'm more careful, I'm more deliberate. So such a person's a person who by nature would also be more careful and more deliberate before they forgive. And yet the fact that this person who's naturally slow to emotional changes is quick to forgive, now you know he's a chassid. Because he's someone who's working on changing his personality, that despite being more slow and more deliberate, he's quick to let go. On the flip side, the guy that is easily angered means what kind of person is he? More impulsive. He changes emotions quickly. You don't need to work hard to convince him to feel something. He sees something, he gets emotional about it. So such a person who gets easily angered by nature should be a person who's also quick to forgive and to let go. And the fact that he won't let go means that he deliberately is choosing to hold on to the anger. And such a person is a rasha. That's a wicked person. You following? Well, the first 2 categories are nature. They're natural tendencies. Which natural tendency is worse? The 3rd and 4th person are people that are changing the nature. Either they're changing to go against being naturally slow and deliberate, to work on being quick to forgive, so they're righteous, or they're going against their nature to not let go of their anger, although they naturally would, and such a person's a rasha. I'll take it a step further. What is the root of anger? What? Selfish, okay, close. The sister of anger is selfishness. You're right. That's on the ultimate level. I'm not going to go to tonight, but you're 100% right that the ideology from Chassidus talks about this at great length, that the root of anger comes from idolatry, but I'm not planning on giving that class tonight. Envy, okay. Arrogance. The root of anger is arrogance, which is why it leads to idolatry. I don't want to go there tonight. Why is arrogance the root of anger? Well, why do you get angry? It hurts, okay? Something only hurts if I don't invite you to a party, for example, and you get angry. You're angry not because I didn't invite you. You're angry because you expected to be invited, right? You expected to be invited and you were invited, and now because your ego is hurt. The root of anger is arrogance. This is a general statement, but it's a general true statement. If something only makes us angry, which means it only bothers us, when we're offended by it. When we think that, are you gonna say this about me? How did they say this about me? That person didn't invite me, or that person was rude to me, or that person, what? And because of our pride, because of our ego, because of our arrogance, that's why we get angry. That's the root of it. If we didn't have any ego, we were able to laugh it off. If we didn't have arrogance, we would be able to let it go. It wouldn't bother us. So it's who gets angry easily? The arrogant person. The person who's more humble is able to let things slide easier. So you were rude to me. Okay, Zol Zain. He had a bad day. I'm not taking it personally. Why? Because it's not about me. I know you had a bad day and you're a negative person. So your rude comment, that was your problem. That's your intestines. That's not my problem. I don't have to internalize it. I only internalize it when I have ego and arrogance. So the person that's easily angered is the arrogant person. The first two people, that's their nature. But the person who's easily angered is arrogant. And therefore, it's hard for him to let go of that anger. He's arrogant, he's sensitive to himself, but to forgive and to appreciate someone else's perspective and to recognize maybe that person made a mistake and it wasn't an agenda against me, or maybe they made a stupid mistake, but they're not evil. They have a very hard time doing that because that's their arrogance. And let me be clear. I've dealt with many people who got angry. And what's always you try to explain to this person, they didn't mean to hurt you. It was a mistake. It was an oversight. They forgot. It was an honest mistake, or it was a stupid mistake, or it was a mistake. There's all kinds of mistakes. But because I'm sensitive to my own hurt feelings, I get angry. But I can't be sensitive to your feelings. I can't be sensitive to the fact that you're also going through something and you have your own stress that made you react the way you reacted. Or to be sensitive that you made a mistake and you had an oversight because you were busy and you didn't think I keep on picking the example of inviting me, but so that's a person who's super in touch with their own hurt feelings and very much oblivious to the hurt feelings or the feelings or the being sensitive to others. As opposed to the tzaddik, the righteous person, the chassid rather, who's very oblivious to his own feelings and very sensitive to others. You got that? Clear? Good. Now, so far, so many comments over here. Feelings hurt. Yeah, this is going to be a tough conversation, I know. People are commenting they have feelings of not being invited to many events. I was very good to most of you, didn't get attention. Not being attached is not a good solution either, but anyway. We're going to do some of the personal therapy afterwards. We can talk about some of the individual's feelings and situations. But let me just be clear, because I want to make sure it's perfect before I go further. We have so far 4 categories of people. The first 2 are people that are more or less in a state of their natural character. Some are easygoing, and therefore they get offended easily, and they forgive easily. Some are more deliberate. They're not so easily offended, but they don't let go so easily. There are people who work on themselves to not be offended. And when they are hurt, they work on themselves to quickly let go, to not have ego, and to not be arrogant, and to recognize there's 2 sides to the story. And the fact that I was hurt is a legitimate side of the coin, but there's a just as legitimate side of the coin from the person that made the comment, or from the person who forgot to invite me, or the person that did whatever they did. There's always going to be 2 sides to the story. And so they work on not being narcissistic in their own feelings, but they work on being aware and sensitive to the other person's feelings. So they're hard to get angry, but quick to let go. And then you have the Russia, the wicked person, who all of his life is about his ego and his feelings or her feelings. And therefore, they hold it, they get angry easily because they're very sensitive. But they don't let go because they only see their perspective and they don't see any other side of the coin. They can't see another perspective, etc. Now, there's a fascinating observation. I'm glad that this is clear, Carmen. I'm glad that you're following us. And all of you online, I hope you're enjoying it with me. There is a fascinating observation to all these four categories, which some of you touched on, Devorah touched on, and Ravit touched on before, which is, you would think, who's a righteous person? Exactly. You would think that if you were writing, if Robert was writing, or if Devorah was writing, or Ravit was writing Ethics of Our Fathers, and you were trying to describe these different character traits, different mindsets, and you're trying to describe the chassid, the righteous person who's the way he should be, how would you describe such a person? They never get angry. The person that never gets angry is not in our story. They're not in our Mishnah. Why not? They don't exist. So there's two answers to this question. Two very, very different answers to this question. Answer number one, which many commentaries write, is Marsha's answer. We're talking about people. This is a book of Ethics of Our Fathers that's meant to be talking to people who are trying to be a chassid, a righteous person, milsa de chassidusa, words of righteousness. It's not a book of tzaddikim that have no evil inclination, and have no ego, and are angels. This is a book for human beings. So human beings have emotions, and it's a natural, normal human reaction to sometimes get hurt, to get offended, and to get angry. And the fact that a person gets angry doesn't make you a Rasha. It doesn't make you a wicked, terrible person. It just makes you human. Now, how you react to that anger, how long you hold on to that anger, how long it takes to make you angry, how easily you become angry, those are the things that define if you're going to be a righteous person, a wicked person, etc. But the point is that we're writing about human beings, not angels. So getting angry is a normal human emotion. That's part of what happens to human beings. We get angry. And it's a sin to get angry. It's a terrible thing to get angry. And we should work as hard as we can on never becoming angry, which is why we should work to be slow to anger and quick to let go of the anger. But don't get disillusioned if you get angry. This is the story of human life. And in fact, according to the Rambam, according to Maimonides, anger is always wrong. Anger is always a wrong response. There is never a time when a person is justified in becoming angry. It's just like you're never allowed to. God gave us temptation to sin. God gave us all kinds of temptations. Lashon hara, wasting time, looking at things you're not allowed to look at, talking about other people, everyone being lazy. Everyone has their weaknesses. And for some people, anger is one of their natural God-given weaknesses. And we have to work our whole lives out eradicating this temperament that God gave us. And that's why God made us. God made us to work on becoming better human beings. And one of the areas in which some people have to struggle more than others, everyone has their area to struggle. It's just what will be your area of struggle. Some of us have to struggle in being able to learn to become more sensitive to others and less sensitive to ourselves, and become slower and slower to anger. Let's go on this thing for a second. Therefore, according to the Rambam, do you know last week's parsha, just 2 days ago, we read the story of Moshe being punished and being told he can never enter the land of Israel. He hit the rock, right? God said, take the stick and go to the Jewish people crying they had no water to drink. And Moshe says to God, which I do, the nation will stone me because they have no water, and they were all negative, and we're going to die in the desert. Why did God even take us here to die? Blah, 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 blah. Talk about Zagrelah on Shabbos. So what happens? God tells Moshe to take the stick and go talk to the rock. You all know the story. I'll make it short because I don't have that much time to go into in detail. But the point is, the end of the story is Moshe hits the rock. And what happens? God says, because you hit the rock, you never be allowed to enter the land of Israel. How does the punishment fit the crime? Like, what did Moshe do wrong? God said, take the stick. So he hit the rock. It still was a miracle. Water still came out. Was God not sanctified from the fact that God hit the rock and water came out? That's not a miracle. You don't say, wow. So there's many, many explanations. And tonight's not a class on Moshe hitting the rock. The Rambam in Hishmeina Prakim, the Rambam writes something interesting. The reason why Moshe was punished not to enter the land of Israel was not because he hit the rock. He was punished because he got angry before he hit the rock. He was punished because he hit the rock in anger. The Torah tells us that Moshe got angry at the people. And he said, listen, you rebellious people. Right? That's what he says. Listen, you rebellious people. Well, water come forth from the rock, and that's when he hit the rock and the water came out. But the problem is not that he hit the rock. Moshe hit the rock 40 years earlier, the first time water came out of the rock, and that wasn't the sin. And if Moshe would have hit the rock the same way he hit the rock the first time, with faith in God, doing what God told him, it would have been fine. The problem is the second time he hit the rock with anger. Hitting the rock with anger is a sin. A Jew should never get angry. And because Moshe got angry, especially in front of all the Jews, that's why he was punished and not be allowed to enter the land of Israel. That is the way the Rambam understands the story of Moshe being punished to never enter the land because of the anger of Moshe, anger which is something that should never be allowed. Now, that's one perspective. There is another answer to the question why none of the four categories described in our Mishnah is a person that never gets angry. And that perspective is that there are times when a person is allowed to or needs to be angry. When should a person be angry? When they're teaching someone else. So, for example, let's say you see your child running into the street. Or if you have young children, you can relate to this example. When you see them being wild in the pool, or, they're running in the street, they run to the street. What's the correct response? The correct response is to scream. The correct response is to show them that what they just did is so dangerous and so unacceptable. There's no, Tatala, next time before you enter the street, you should really look both ways, if you don't mind, my dear. There's times when good conversation is very important, but sometimes you need to show a line was crossed it's a red line that can't be crossed. And sometimes the only response is to show anger, because anger is so powerful. It's such a like a wake-up call. It's like the kid realizes, I ran into the street and my parents screamed. Now that only works, by the way, if you don't always scream. If the parent screamed every single morning because he's not ready on time for school, so then the screaming loses its shock value very, very quickly. So I'm talking about in a healthy home where screaming is not the normal voice of language used on a daily basis. In a healthy home where we normally have conversations, we normally discuss things in a healthy dialogue, and now the child hears the parent scream, wow, that shocks them. A healthy teacher who doesn't scream on a daily basis in their classroom, and then one day they have to scream, that's very valuable, that's very effective. So there's two schools of thoughts among the rabbis. If there are times when being angry is allowed. And some rabbis say that a teacher in the right circumstances, a parent in the right circumstances when they're educating, and a line was crossed, or a rabbi, when they show a certain, this was not proper decorum in the synagogue, it's not okay. When you need to use the shock value of making a point that has to be made, a rabbi, a teacher is allowed to be angry to get a point across. Now, the Rambam says that that's not true. The Rambam says even a teacher is never allowed to be angry. The Rambam says, actually, I want to read this text inside. The Rambam says, you have the Rambam. Let's read the Rambam. The Rambam says, I'm going to quote from the Rambam chapter, the laws of Deos. The laws of Deos is the laws of knowledge, chapter 3, halacha 3. Says the Rambam, anger is an extremely bad attribute, and one should distance oneself from it by going to the other extreme. One should train oneself not to get angry, even about something to which anger might be the appropriate response. Never, he's saying, get angry. Never, ever, ever. The ancient sages said, One who yields to anger is as if he had worshipped idols, as you said. They also said, whoever yields to anger is, if he is wise, his wisdom deserts him. And if he is a prophet, his prophecy leaves him. And the life of an irate person is not a life. Therefore, they have directed that one distance himself from anger and accustom himself to not feel any reaction, even to things which provoke anger. This is the good path. Let me stop for a second. The Rambam, in this context, I meant to read this a few minutes before. The Rambam is discussing the middle path that a person should normally take. And the Rambam very famously says that what's the right path a person should live? The middle. Not too much to this side, not too much to that side. Not too much, not too much eating, not too much hunger, not too much, don't spend too much money, don't be too cheap. Find that middle path to live a healthy, happy life. However, the Rambam gives two exceptions where it's never okay and you have to go all the way to one extreme to find the right path. One is actually arrogance, and the other is anger. And here's the text that we're just reading from the Rambam, that anger, there is no middle path of anger. There is no sometimes yes, sometimes no when it comes to anger. The Rambam tells us explicitly that anger is an extremely bad attribute, that you need to distance it from it by going all the way to the extreme. As he ends this paragraph, that is the good path. Normally, the good path is in the middle of the road. In this situation, the good path is all the way to the extreme where you never get angry. But now let's read the next paragraph of the Rambam. The Rambam is going to discuss now this debate amongst the rabbis. What is the rule? What's the halach about a teacher or a parent or a rabbi who's trying to use shock value in educating their students? Says the Rambam, if he should wish to arouse fear in his children and household, or within the community if he's a communal leader, and wishes to be angry at them to motivate them to return to the proper path, he should present an angry front to them to punish them. But he should be inwardly be calm. He should be like one who acts out the part of an angry man in his wrath, but is not himself angry. You understand? So some rabbis will tell you that you're allowed when needed, when teaching, when trying to scare your child from running into the street, it's okay for someone to scream, don't do that. I told you not to play with fire, and you're playing with fire. That's dangerous, and get angry. The Rambam says, never. The Rambam says the difference between looking angry, sounding angry, acting angry, and allowing anger to enter into your heart. To allow it to enter into your heart is never allowed. Because once you allow it to enter into your heart, well, that's a poison, that's a negativity. Even though sometimes medicine is needed, sometimes you take poison. It's a poison, you should never take it. The other rabbis give the example of a fire. I saw the example that when is anger allowed? It's like a controlled fire. We live on the Everglades, right? Sometimes in the Everglades, they'll do a controlled fire. What's a controlled fire? If you leave all the underground, if you leave all the growth, all the dead trees or whatever to keep on piling up, one day when there's a real fire, it will spread so fast and the fire becomes so big, it'll be uncontrollable, be very dangerous. So to prevent too much buildup of dead growth and dead trees, etc., in forests or in the Everglades, they come, they're prepared, and they put the fire trucks there, and they put the water first and all that, and they prepare a controlled fire where they light the fire knowing it's under control, it won't spread too big, to prevent a bigger fire later on. Anger is fire. And we can understand the analogy very well, how anger is like a fire. And some fires, once you let them go, it's too late. And I've seen this. I have seen people get angry, and the anger started about this. But then once they remained angry, it's no longer, I'm angry at you because of this. It's now, I'm angry at you. And then angry at everyone that talks to you. Then I'm angry at anything that's associated with you. And we forget, I was actually only angry about this particular thing that happened. But the anger, unchecked, is like a fire uncontrolled. Fire uncontrolled Very, very dangerous. I mean, we saw what happened in California, I don't know, 3 months ago, whatever it was, destroyed, I don't know, billions and millions and millions of dollars worth of homes and business, destroyed whole parts of cities. Once a fire is loose, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So some rabbis say a controlled fire is sometimes necessary. The Rambam says it's never, ever, ever allowed. Okay. So, yeah. Yes. So there are some rabbis say that, yes, that sometimes anger is allowed. If you see someone doing a sin, that's correct. Some rabbis say that if you see a person doing a sin, you're allowed to get angry at them to stop them from sinning. If you see someone committing a crime, you should get angry and stand up with, with ferociousness to defend yourself, etc. And the Rambam says you should only act as if you're angry. Even when you have to pretend like you're angry, it's only a show. I'm not, yes. It's difficult. And as I already said before, the fact that the Mishnah doesn't say anyone never gets angry is because the reality is, for us normal mortal human beings, that's a pretty high level to reach to never get angry. But the fact is that this is an area that is debate. I'm showing you both sides of the debate. Within Jewish law, there is the perspective of many rabbis that the reason why the Mishnah doesn't mention never getting angry, because there are times where anger is justified. Not because someone offended you. Let me just be clear. Someone offending you is never justification for anger, ever. But there are times when a certain sin has been committed, or you're educating someone, where the shock value of anger is needed, or the absoluteness of anger is needed. And yet there are some rabbis, like the Maimonides, that say that even in such situations is not allowed. Only to pretend, but never, ever, ever are you allowed to actually allow anger to enter inside you. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't say he was angry. He was zealous for God. It doesn't say he was angry. He was zealous. Zealous is when you see someone doing something and you act with that. There's a big difference in anger and being zealous and being motivated with seeing a crime happen and responding. He killed them because they were committing a sin. He says he was a kanoi. The words of the Torah are that he was kine. The exact words are kine l'Hashem. He was a kanoi. He was jealous for God. He was jealous for God. He was zealous for God. It's not very often they maybe go hand in hand. They're not exactly the same thing. I can defend you without being angry. You ever?
It's impossible. It's angry and jealous and put together.
Anger and jealousy go together. Yes. But jealousy is sometimes you need jealousy to protect. Jealousy is not for jealous. It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. There are times when the Torah allows jealousy. We're talking about a nazir, a saitamin. The Torah says, God himself is called jealous, by the way. Sometimes jealousy shows that you're important to me, and that's why I'm jealous. Because in the marriage, if someone's cheating and you get upset and you're jealous has a negative connotation today, but that's the word the Torah uses is jealous. It's because this is something valuable to me. Anyway, there's what to think about it. I mean, it's a good question. It's a good question.
And there is
Yeah. Yes. Erech hapayim v'rav chesed ve'emes. God is erech hapayim, slow to anger and abundant in forgiveness, 100%. Which is interesting. So it's like God doesn't get angry. He's slow to anger and quick to forgive, which is what we described here about the chassid, the righteous person who's slow to anger and quick to forgive. That's interesting. I didn't think of that either. Very good. Okay. I want to make 2 more points. Yeah. Let me finish and then I'll take more questions because I want to finish. It's already almost 9 o'clock. So, since we've learned how dangerous anger is, right? The Rambam says never, ever, ever to be angry. And we also learned that anger is a natural part of the human condition. So then we need to learn how to master anger. And specifically in two ways, because if you paid attention to the Mishnah didn't just say there's people who are more angry, less angry. It didn't just say less, more, more, more. What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah gave two categories. Slow to anger, like hard to get angry, not getting angry, and then quick to let go of the anger. So when we talk about not allowing ourselves to give into anger, there's two areas that we need to learn to master. Number one, how to avoid getting angry, how to be slow to anger. And number two, we need to learn how to let go of the anger, how to forgive the anger once we have the anger. Okay, so let me give you one idea and one story for each. Okay? They say a great joke about a story about this rabbi that let's say with the doctor also, this guy came to the doctor, the rabbi, and said every single time my wife says something stupid, I try and explain to her, we get into a shouting match, and there's a whole argument back and forth. And I can't help it. My wife doesn't stop saying stupid things, and stop saying things that make me upset. And it's like a terrible situation. So the rabbi says, I'm going to give you a special water. I'm going to give you water, I'm going to pray over this water. And whenever your wife says something that's about to make you angry, before you say it, put the water into your mouth and keep the water in your mouth for as long as you can hold the water in your mouth. Keep this special holy water in your mouth for as long as you can. You'll see it will help you with your anger. A month later, come back to the rabbi. Rabbi, our marriage has never been better. Tell me, what did you do in the water? What prayers did you say over that water that made the water so powerful to make me let go and to not get angry? So he said, there's no power to the water. It's regular water from the sink. But when you have water in your mouth, you can't scream. You can't argue. So having the water in your mouth, and your mouth is full of water, so you can't start arguing. By the time you got the water out already, you realize, okay, it's not. So she said it, okay, she said it, life can move on, and everyone can be happy, and live happily ever after. The first idea of avoiding anger is take a breath. If you need, put water in your mouth. Just pause. Hit the pause button for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Things are going to be better already. In Jewish law, we have a concept called a get mekusher. What's a get mekusher? The rabbis were worried about a Kohen who divorces his wife. Once he divorces her, he can't remarry her because the Kohen can't marry a divorcee. So they made a whole extra part to the get where you put stitches in the get. In the divorce document, to put in stitches. Why? It's an extra step. For what reason? Just to slow down the process. So as it's taking a long time and they're putting stitching in, they're folding, had to fold the get and stitch it closed, this extra time that it takes will give the guy time to take a deep breath and maybe have second thoughts. He got angry and wanted to divorce his wife. Maybe we'll calm him down, he'll reconsider, and they won't get divorced. So the point is, sometimes the best solution to avoiding anger is don't try and convince yourself not to get angry. When you're in the moment of anger, you're not going to be able to start giving yourself pep talks. Oh, really? He didn't mean it. Really? She said, there we go. It's not going to work. Just tell yourself, I'll be angry, but in 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to wait, and then I'll get angry. And this way, by waiting before we act on our anger, or before we think about our anger, before we pontificate on our anger, and we just wait for our feelings to dissipate, that alone will help us, get rid of a lot of negative emotions. So on this, I'll tell you a story of the Naftali of Rapshitz. Naftali of Rapshitz was a big, famous Hasidic Rebbe. And he had a beautiful silver tobacco box. Those days, people used to smoke tobacco, not smoke. They would not smoke it. They would snuff. There you go. In Yiddish, called shmek tabak. Like on Yom Kippur, something would be like a little bit of tobacco you put in your nose. I don't know exactly. And you smell it. That's what they did back then. So people carried around a box of tobacco that they would put into their nose and smell it. So someone was giving the Rebbe a gift of a silver tobacco box. It was a very illustrious gift. But he didn't smoke tobacco, smell tobacco, but he kept the empty box. He kept it with him. And one of his students noticed that every now and then he would realize the Rebbe would open the box, empty box, look in the empty box, close it. An hour later, he would open the box again and look in the box and close the box again. He's very confused, like what he's doing, it's an empty box. Didn't put anything in, didn't take anything out, just opened it, closed it, opened it, closed it. So he asked his Rebbe, like, what is that? So the Rebbe told him that anytime I feel myself getting angry at someone, or getting angry at something, I quickly open this silver box that I carry with me, and I put my anger in the box for an hour. I put my anger in the box. I go look inside, I put my anger in the box for an hour. And after an hour, I open up the box to take it out. But that time already, I realized it's not a reason to get angry. I'm able to get over it. So this is one simple technique, a simple idea, how to be slow to anger. Just give yourself time. Before you respond, last week I got an email that made me very upset. So whatever, the deal is not relevant. I wanted to call the person. I did it. I said, you know what? I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I'm going to sleep on it. I'm just not going to respond now because I know that if I'm going to call the person now, I might get upset. I still haven't responded to the email. I haven't called the person, but I'm not upset about it anymore. You know, it's already accepted. It is what it is. It happened. It's done. At some point, I'll probably have to tell the person what I think, but the anger, it wasn't really anger. It was much more frustration that I felt when I saw that email. Now it's already a few days later. I let it go. I let it go because I didn't want to respond then because I knew that's not a good time to respond. And once I pushed it away, I pushed it off, it already got pushed off. So that's one very simple but very valuable technique to avoiding anger, being slow to anger. Put it in the silver tobacco box for an hour. Put it in your purse for an hour. You come back to it later. Someone sent you a nasty text message. You don't have to respond right away. Wait an hour. And if you still need to respond in an hour, you'll see it'll be much calmer, much easier to deal with it afterwards. Okay. Now, the second half. What about if a person already got angry? So the Mishnah talked about being slow to anger. And then we talked about being quick to let go of the anger, quick to be appeased. So I want to tell you a beautiful story about this chassid, this righteous Jew, came to his rabbi, to the rabbi, and he said, what should I do? A very important person in town, but I have a very fragile ego, and I get offended all the time, and I have a short temper, and people do things or say things that are not proper, and I get angry, and and everyone around me knows that I'm angry, my kids and my wife, and they all afraid around me because they see I get angry. So he told, the rabbi told us, this chassid, when something goes not the way you want, tell yourself it's not a big deal. Say it's just a test. It's fake. It's not. Don't worry about it. Try. Anyway, he sends him away. He calls in his gabbai, the shamish, who's in charge of giving out the honors in the shul on Shabbat by the Torah reading. He said, I know that this rich guy that just came to me is supposed to get the haftorah this week. He had a birthday or yards. I don't know. He's sponsoring the kiddush. I don't know. He's expecting to get the haftorah, which is, on a shul, the most important aliyah, the guy that reads the haftorah. It's a big honor. The mitzvah boy gets it. It's a big honor to read the haftorah. So this week, instead of giving him the haftorah the way he's supposed to get, I want you to give him galilo, the dressing of the Torah instead. Now, dressing the Torah, even a kid could do dressing of the Torah. The only thing that you don't need an adult to do is to dress the Torah. So call him up by name and give him the dressing of the Torah. And the guy that was mortified. He's going to get so angry. Kind of temper tantrum this guy will have in the synagogue when he sees me giving the haftorah to someone else instead of him, when he's supposed to get it. It's his week to get the haftorah, and I'll give it to someone else. And then I'm going to give him the galila that normally a child would get. You crazy? He's going to have a heart attack in shul. The rabbi says, this is my instructions. I want you to do it. He has no choice. He has to follow the instructions of the rabbi. But he knows this guy's going to freak out in shul. Finally, he had an idea. The rabbi didn't tell him that he can't warn the guy in advance what's going to happen. He just said what to do. So he goes to this guy's house, to the rich man. He says, rich man, my dear friend, I want you to know that the Rebbe is testing you this Shabbos. He told me that instead of giving you haftorah, instead to give you the dressing of the Torah that normally a kid would get, I'm going to have to do it because that's what the rabbi wants you to do. We should know it's just a test. The Rebbe is setting you up to see how you react. I just wanted to have a heads up before. Anyway, comes Shabbos, comes time for the haftorah, and the gabbai, instead of calling up this rich man, calls up Chaim Yankel instead. Oh, wow, like they knew he's supposed to get the haftorah. And they're like, wait to see how he reacts. Nothing. Then a minute later, they lift the Torah, and the gabbai in a loud voice calls up this rich man to be the one to dress the Torah. Like they were sure they're going to see an explosion happen right then and there. And the man went to the Torah, like nothing happened, very calm, dresses the Torah, puts on the crown, goes back to his seat, like nothing happened. Everyone couldn't believe it. So afterwards, the Rebbe goes over to this rich man that addressed the Torah and said, you see, it's not so hard. You got offended. You weren't given the honor you were waiting for. And you were okay. You were able to control yourself. She says, Rebbe, I have to tell you the truth. The Gabbai told me in advance that you're going to be testing me on Shabbos. So I had advance notice to prepare myself to not get angry when it would happen. So I knew that it was a test. So I was ready for it. So I didn't get angry. So the Rebbe smiles at the Chassid, exactly. You should know that all of life is a test from God. And I'm giving you now advance notice. God is telling you he's going to test you in order to see how you react. So start telling yourself or preparing yourself for any time that God tests you to know it's only a test from God to see how you're going to react. And this is what we need to internalize. When we do sometimes lose our cool, and sometimes things do make us upset, and they do bother us, and they do make us feel angry, to remember that everything that happens is from Hashem. It's from God. And sometimes the only reason why God gave us this nudnik or this problem or this challenge or this person who offended us is only to test us to see how will we react. Will we get angry or will we overcome the test and still be kind to them and nice to them even though they said whatever they said and did whatever they did? That, my friends, is a secret to letting go of the anger and not holding on to it by realizing it's all a test from Hashem. Okay, my friends, Laila Tov. Hope you all enjoyed. Next week, same time, same place. Bezrat Hashem. Now we can look at all the comments. Stephanie, I'm glad you enjoyed. Thank you. So great. Jessica's watching. I hope. Slash and burn. I don't know what slash and burn means, Andrea. Monday night's God my week. I want to welcome everyone here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you again next week, same time, same place. Anger can lead to disease. Yes, anger can lead to disease. That is true. When you carry anger inside you, it's poison. Anger is poison. Susie, I know feelings hurt. Not good to hold on to her feelings, though. Even though they get hurt, sometimes it's not good to hold on to it. Ravita is saying, if all is controlled by Hashem in each situation for our benefit, there's no reason to get angry. Ravit, how did you know how I went in the class? Very good, Ravit. Okay, negativity is poison. Exactly true, Stephanie. Okay. As we're going to hear, Carmen, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed Laila Tov. Stephanie, Laila Tov, Alona. Carmen, I'm glad you enjoyed it. How do we do the anger what Hamas did to the house? Hamas, you're allowed to be angry. The word Hamas means anger, by the way. You know, the Hebrew word for anger, Hamas, is an expression of anger. Hamas is the anger enemies of Hashem. That's not a personal anger. That's jealousy. That's jealousy for God. New class maybe on jealousy. Maybe Inez, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Inez, thank you. Joe, Erev Tov, from Olympia, Washington State. Time to go to Olympia, Washington State. Okay. Also, we got lots of having. Okay. Let's not get into the politics. It's hard. Bibi has a hard job. He said, gosh, I give him blessings. He should be successful in Washington. That's all. I'm worried what happened. Okay, yes. Yes. Say good night, my friends. Online, I'll see you next week.